Opening hearts and incubating dreams by applying our science of mind principles. That's what we are here to do. That's what we do all the time. And this month, we are looking at, in a very tangible way, what it takes to bridge the gap between the idea of the dream, between the seed thought that we've had of this next level of expression that we are called to do or be or have or experience, that incubation of that seed and the actual full-fledged manifestation of the dream. There can be, oftentimes there is a gap between those two things. And so this month, using this beautiful book, Successfully Midair, written by our own Reverend Sandra Daly, sitting right there in the fourth pew every Sunday. We're looking at tools out of this book to help us, I said, build the bridge across that gap, but it isn't really building the bridge. It is revealing the bridge that is already there that we just can't see until we, oh, now I'm stuck. There we go. Until we take some steps across it. And I want to thank whoever anonymously left on my desk this week the New York Times Magazine from March 15th this year. And I wasn't sure why this was left on my desk until I looked carefully at the cover, and then I realized why someone left this for me. Can you see this? That's what it feels like sometimes when we are stepping out off the bridge into what appears to be mid-air, or we're simply looking down at all the possible problems that can occur and we're afraid to step. This month has been about being willing to take the step and knowing that that bridge forms right in front of us as we go. So thank you, whoever delivered this. I'm absolutely going to keep this as a reminder of this experience that we've had this week. So last Sunday and the Sunday before and today, we have talked about some tools that come out of Reverend Sandy's book that will help us take the steps instead of running back to the I started to say shore, but running back to the cliff before we step, where it may be safe and we may be secure, but our dream isn't there. And so instead of running back, we have looked at some tools to help us keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I've shared with you a passage from The Alchemist, a different book that was written back in the 80s in Brazil, translated into English in the 70s. And it's about a young shepherd boy who has a dream, but who doesn't think that as a young shepherd boy he possibly has the ability to make this dream come true, to bring this dream to fruition. And he is searching for the alchemist who he believes can help him reach his dream. And the passages that I've shared them as a way to bridge between our different weeks. And last week, I ended by the alchemist and the young man, the young shepherd boy had been having a conversation, and the young man had learned that his heart is always going to lead him in the right direction, and as long as he continues to listen to his heart, or his, what is the word that we... Thank you, intuition. And we call that intuition now the what? Thank you for saying that. I'm glad 3 of you remembered it. That's fantastic. Hey, I'll take 3. That works for me. And I know others of you remembered it. You're just being shy. That's all. So I read a passage about that, and it got us there. And then last week I ended after the alchemist and the young boy had been having this conversation. Then the young boy says, "What should I do now?" And that's where I left it last week. And I said I would share with you the alchemist's answer to that question, and that's where we're going to start this morning. So he said, "What should I do now?" The alchemist said, "Continue in the direction of the pyramid," which for us is your God-inspired aspirations and your divinely driven dreams. So continue in the direction of the pyramid, said the alchemist, and continue to pay heed to the omens. Your heart is still capable of showing you where the treasure is. So the omens, of course, are the voice that loves you. "So is that the one thing I need to know?" the young boy said. "No," the alchemist answered. "What you still need to know is this." And what I'm about to share with you takes us to where we're going to go today. Before a dream is realized, the soul of the world tests everything that was learned along the way. It does this not because it's evil, but so that we can, in addition to realizing our dreams, master the lessons we've learned as we've moved toward the dream. That's the point at which most people give up. It's the point at which, as we say in the language of the desert, one dies of thirst just when the palm trees have appeared on the horizon. Every search begins with beginner's luck, and every search successfully concludes with a victor being severely tested. Okay, so take a breath. Like, oh, really? Jeez. So the book goes on, just to let you know, and the young boy is tested. He's tested a couple of times, and he absolutely learns deeply who he is so that he can then move on to manifest his dream. I want to say something that I say a lot, but it's really important that at this juncture and this theme, we talk about this. And it fits perfectly about these tests. I don't believe in tests. I don't believe the universe gives us tests. But I do believe that we have opportunities along the way to refine us, to hone us, to have us release that which does not serve us, so that we can become the person we are meant to be. So it is not the manifestation of the dream that really matters, although that's fun. And there's nothing wrong with experiencing that, of sharing the gift in the world, of birthing out a song or writing a book. Nothing wrong with that. That's fabulous. But that's not really what matters. What really matters is who we become in the process. The more we get in touch with and in communion with and in connection with and in realization of the God of our being wanting to express as us in that way. Does that make sense? Do you get that? So it is really the journey and the who we become in the journey that matters. And that's why we have tests. I don't like that word. That was the word in The Alchemist. I would say that is why we have opportunities to face obstacles. And if you want to have a new take on obstacles, we talked about that last Sunday, so get the tape or listen to the CD or jump online and listen to last Sunday, because it's a whole new idea about obstacles. But today, we're going to just look at, to get us safely to the other side of the bridge, we may have to face something or two or three, maybe, just possibly, to really hone us so that we can be all that we came here to be. And I want to give you a couple of examples of people truly wanting to be who they came here to be. And in these examples, there is our final tool for this morning. And our final tool for today that I'm going to share with you is the tool that Reverend Sandy brings out in her book. It's one of 10. I've not done all 10 this month, but you got to read the book to read all 10. But this is one of them. And it is asking yourself a question. When you're on that bridge and you're not quite on the other side and you may be getting scared and you may be feeling some challenges and some tests, here's a question to ask yourself. How much do I want what I say I want? How much do I really want what I say I want? If you really want what you say you want, and whatever it looks like, what you're really wanting is a fuller expression of the divine as you, if you really want that, are you willing to take the steps? Because if the answer is, I want it a lot, then the steps will be taken. So here's some examples, a couple quick examples of, and you may recognize these folks, of who really wanted what they wanted. So this was a young group of musicians in the 60s, and they wanted their dream so much that they kept on going, even after they were told by a recording company executive, we don't like your sound, besides guitar groups are on the way out. Who do you suppose that was? I heard it. That was, in fact, the Beatles, who changed the history of music. Exactly, other than Elvis, of course, who did it too. But they all, sorry, I'm just having to say that, being a big Elvis fan. Got to throw Elvis in there. Here's another one. A young redheaded comedian wanted to make people laugh so much that she kept on going, even when the headmaster of her acting school said, try another profession, dear, any other profession. Oh, very good, very good. Now, somebody in first service said Carrot Top, but that wasn't quite right. It was, in fact, Lucille Ball. There was an inventor who so believed that his invention would change the way people lived and it would change it for the better, that he so believed in that, he so wanted what he said he wanted, that he made over 2,000 attempts at this invention before it actually worked. Who do you suppose that was? Yes, inventing the what? The light bulb. And how about this one? This man, don't say it until the end, because I want you to hear all of this, even if you know who it is, sooner than the end. This man also had a passion for changing the world, and he thought he could do that in the governmental arena. And so at age 23, he ran for state legislature, and he lost. At 29, he sought to become the Speaker of the state legislature, and he was defeated. At age 31, he sought to become an elector, and he was defeated. At 34, he ran for Congress, and he was defeated. At age 37, he ran for Congress again, and this time he won. But when he ran for re-election, he was defeated. At age 45, he ran for Senator of the United States, and he was defeated. At age 47, I'm only hearing like 2 of you say that, so next one, here we go. At age 47, he sought the vice presidential nomination at his party's national convention, and he was defeated. At age 48, he ran for U.S. Senate for the second time, and he was defeated. However, at the age of 50, he ran for the president. He just said, the heck with all these small things. Let's go for the big one. He ran for the presidency of the United States, and he became the 16th president who changed the face of history in America, in the world, Abraham Lincoln. Do you think there was a time along the way where he had to say, how much do I really want what I say I want? My guess is there were several times, and yet he stayed walking across that bridge. And I know that the experience he had walking across that bridge made him the president that he was. He wouldn't have been that president had he not had all of that experience. He was refined, he was honed, he was polished, he was ready to do the work he came here to do. There's a great story of a group of women in a Bible study, and they're reading scripture, and there's a scripture in Malachi 3:3, and it says, he will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And these women were not sure, what does that mean? He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver. What does that mean? Surely it's saying something about the nature of God and the character of God, but we don't understand it. So one of them said, you know what, I'll go on a field trip, and I'm going to go to a silversmith, and I'm going to find out what does that mean in terms of a silversmith? So she found a local silversmith, and she called and said, may I come and just watch you, observe you do your work? She didn't tell him why. She didn't tell him what her field trip assignment was. But she just said, I'd like to observe what you do. And he said, of course, come next Tuesday. I would be happy to show you what I do when I refine silver. So at the appointed time, she went to see him. And she watched him take a container of metal, silver, and hold it under the fire. And he explained to her that he had to hold it into the middle of the fire, where the fire was the hottest, because the silver needed the highest heat in order to be refined. And she thought to herself of the passage, he sits as a refiner and purifier of silver. And she thought about all the times that she has been in the heat, that she's been in the heat of the moment, in the fire. Any of us ever been in the fire? Yeah. Well, maybe, she said, maybe I was being refined. Maybe I was being purified. So she sat and watched. And then she asked him if it was true that he had to sit there the whole time and watch. And he said, absolutely, I must watch this very carefully, because there comes a certain point where the refinement has happened. And if I don't take the silver off the heat right at that moment, it will go too far and the silver will be ruined. So I must watch it and make sure at that moment I take it off the heat. And the woman said, that's amazing. How in the world do you know? How do you know when the moment is? He said, oh, that's easy. That's very easy to know. The moment comes when I can see my image in the silver. Think about that. This journey that we take, these tests, according to the word that the alchemists use, that we receive, they are honing us so that the face of God can be more fully seen as us. So that we can live what we came here to live, do what we came here to do, be who we came here to be, which is an expression of the divine. So this whole month, we have been looking at the tools in this book. And today's tool is, again, asking that question. How much do I want what I say I want? Am I willing to walk even perhaps through some fire to get there? Knowing that God has our back, that's another tool we've looked at. Knowing that truly we will get there. Let us not Let us not die of thirst just when the palm trees have risen up to give us water. So all month we've been looking at this book written by Reverend Sandra Daly. And I've been quoting Sandy and sharing, of her book. And it occurred to me that maybe a good thing would be to let you actually hear from her a little bit. So I want Reverend Sandy to come forward and share us one of her many experiences of bridging that gap between incubation and manifestation and how she did it. So, Reverend Sandy, welcome. Take it away.
Good morning. Ooh, that was nice. So I wanted to talk about something today that I've never actually written about. So this is new. I happen to work for an amazing, wonderful company. And the way I got that job was a total God thing. It was a God thing. I can't call it anything other than that. In 2000, I came to Arizona. Most of you know a bit of my story. I was homeless and running from domestic violence, and lots of really amazing stuff happened, including meeting my amazing, fabulous husband during that time. Yes. And I ended up working for Motorola, and this was the best job I'd ever had in my whole entire life, making more money than I'd ever made in my whole entire life. And that was awesome. Fast forward a few months, and they're walking people out of the building because things have changed in their company. And I was not one of those people, although I felt ready to be one of those people. And so that was the fall of 2000. By February of 2001, I was done. I was done working for Motorola, and I felt really called to move forward and start actually using. When I left Portland and the domestic violence, I also happened to be in the middle of getting a degree in college, and I had to stop that. I stopped in the middle of that. But I was still making those payments on that student loan, and I wasn't using any of the stuff that I had learned in college. Part of that college experience was AutoCAD, which is computer-aided drafting, beginning, intermediate, and advanced, which I had completed. So I decided I'm working for Motorola. I got some divine discontent going on here. I'm done. I'm feeling called to move into what I actually want to do and what I studied for. So I started looking for a drafting position. I just want to be a drafter. And the thing about this was I had no experience. My schooling was over a year previous, and I hadn't even seen a computer in a year. So I'm going and putting these resumes, and I put a dress on, even though I didn't really want to. And I'm pounding the streets looking for this job that I feel called toward. And I'm putting resumes in at architectural offices, and they are looking at me like I'm nuts. Why would we hire you when there are so many more qualified people? That who do you think you are sort of attitude to think that we would actually even consider hiring you when you have no experience and you haven't seen a computer in a year. So the answer was no, a lot. And I did this. This was a process, and it took some time, weeks and a couple months probably from beginning to end. And so I'm pounding the streets. I'm not giving up, even though I am feeling frustrated. And I just want to say, as I'm telling this story, I want to put 3 things out there to keep in mind. Number 1, everything happens for a reason. And that reason is always to serve and support us in our forward movement. Always, even the stuff, including the stuff that doesn't feel very good. It all has its purpose in our experience. The second thing is something that Reverend Michelle says all the time. It's my job to know the what, and it's God's job to know the how. And another part of that is another part of my job in that is to let God do what God does. Just let God do what God does and not try to control all the little dang details, because that causes stress, right? So, and the third thing is something that I talk about quite a bit in Successfully Midair. Nelson Mandela, we all know who he was, amazing guy, spent 27 years in prison. And in the midpoint of that experience, he was frustrated and feeling stuck and feeling like he was being tested and all of that. And he had a new thought, which is where the tool number one, the open moment that Reverend Michelle talked about at the beginning of all this, actually comes from, is his experience. He had a new thought, and he was willing to believe it. He was willing to believe this thought. What if this is just what my dream looks like right now? What if this really uncomfortable, really painful circumstance is what my dream looks like right now? And that was the attitude that I worked to take during this job search process. What if this is just what it looks like right now? Even though it feels terrible, I'm willing to believe that it's all going to work out in the end, and I'm willing to take my steps as I feel called to. So while I'm doing this job search, Rick and I also happen to be members of the Arizona Herpetological Association, which means what? Rattlesnakes. We like rattlesnakes. And we used to spend a lot of time. We used to spend all our spare time going and rescuing rattlesnakes and relocating them in the desert so that people wouldn't kill them. And at this particular time, there was a man in, I believe it was Cave Creek. His name was Dave. He was wonderful. I had gone to his property 4 times at this point and gotten 4 rattlesnakes off his property. So much so that he didn't even bother calling the hotline anymore. He just called me personally on my cell because I knew where he lived, so he wouldn't have to explain. So this particular day, he called me, "Sandy, he's back." And I said, "Okay, I'll be there in 45 minutes. You just keep an eye on him." And during my drive out there, Reverend Michelle has also talked about tool number 4, which is the problem is never the problem. The problem is never the problem. The problem is always what I'm thinking about it that's making it seem like a problem. And that's where I went during my drive out to Cave Creek. Albert Einstein said the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them. And that's one of my favorite quotes, and that's what occurred to me on my drive out. Okay, so I'm handling this at the problem level. What if I looked up to the solution level? What would I see if I was willing to see the solution? And the voice that loves me showed up immediately and said, "Why don't you're going to the home of a man who's obviously well-to-do. He probably knows at least one architect. Why don't you ask him for a reference? Ask him if he knows an architect, and because he knows you now, he knows what kind of person you are, and he knows you're, interesting. And, so why not ask him if he knows an architect and see and take it from there?" So this is a step in faith. This is me getting past the fear. This is such an interesting process. So I got out there, and the guy was standing in his driveway holding down a rattlesnake with a push broom. So I parked my car. I got the snake. The other snake was around the back. And while we were walking around to the back of his house, I explained to him, this is what's going on. And do you happen to know an architect? And he said, "Sure I do. Here's his home phone number. Give him a call." And my mind went to, "You don't do that. I don't have any experience. I haven't seen a computer in a year, and all I have is schooling, and I'm going to call this professional person at home and say, 'Will you hire me?'" Nope. not going to get myself to do that. I sat in fear of making that phone call for a good couple weeks. I used his phone number as a bookmark. So it was in my face. So I wouldn't forget about it, and I just couldn't get myself past the fear. And then one day, it occurred to me that I happen to love quotes, and another one of my favorites is one by William Shakespeare, who said, "Our doubts are traitors, and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." So what am I going to lose if I can't get myself to make this phone call? I'm going to lose the opportunity and the real possibility that exists if I can't get myself to pick up the phone and call the guy. Well, what am I going to win if I can? Well, I'll know that I had the backbone to do it, even if nothing comes from it. My self-respect and my self-esteem will be improved. So, all right, and then the Martin Luther King quote that goes along with that one, take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You don't have to know where it's going to go. Just take the step, and the next one will present itself. So those two quotes combined, I use as a tool all the time. And in this particular case, my step in faith was picking up the phone call, even though I was terrified to do it. And the guy was nice. And my friend Dave had neglected to tell me that this man worked out of his house. So, of course, he's giving me his home number because the guy works from his house. So I talked to him. He said, from what you're saying to me, I really feel like you would be happier working for a structural engineer. And so I can't help you, but here's the name of somebody who might be able to. And that guy's name was Dan. And I called Dan right away. I'm not going to do this to myself again today. So I called Dan, and he said, well, I can't help you, but here are two names and phone numbers of people who might be able to. And one of them was a man named Paul Scott, who is one of the owners of the company that I work for now. But I called. The man is never available. He is never available. They kept trying to send me to his voicemail, and you just don't do that. You don't leave voicemail on the owner of the company's system and say, I don't have any experience, but I'd like you to hire me. You just don't do that. And that was how I was looking at it for another couple weeks, until finally, one day, I decided this is really silly. So I left my name and number and just said, will you please call me back? I didn't try to explain anything. He called me back within 15 minutes. And on this day, I happened to have the snake hotline coming to my house. So when he called me, I answered the phone. Arizona Reptile Information Hotline, this is Sandy. How can I help you? And that caught his attention. This is a man who likes interesting people. And so this whole snake thing was really to my benefit. So I told him what I was looking for, and I kept having to put him on hold because I had the hotline. I'm responsible for answering the phone if some panicking person is calling about a snake. So I kept having to say, I'm sorry, it's the fire department. I've got to put you on. And he's hanging out on hold because he wants to know what I'm doing. So I finally got an actual few minutes to talk to him, and I told him what I wanted, and I told him what I felt called to, and he said, it makes me want to cry, oh, what a coincidence. Oh, what a coincidence. We, meaning him and the other 5 owners of the company, in our Monday today was Thursday, in our Monday meeting this week, we decided that we're going to hire an entry-level drafter. Can you come in for an interview tomorrow? And I was working for them 2 weeks later. And that was in 2001. And this company is the best company, just like my husband is the best man in the world for me. This company is the best company in the world for me to be working. I have a coworker in the room too. She works there too. She knows what I'm talking about. So everything happens for a reason. And that reason is always, 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 always to serve and support me in my forward movement, even the stuff that doesn't feel good. I couldn't get myself to pick up the phone. There was a divine reason for that. There's always a divine reason for that. What if this is just what my dream looks like right now? Because it is. Whatever your this is right now, what if this is just what your dream looks like right now? Because it is. It is. And that's so, if we can just get ourselves to trust the process and know that this is God's process and I just got to listen. I just got to listen for that voice and follow what it says. And things always work out. It was an amazing experience. And I've had so many like them because I've been willing. How much do I want what I say I want? I had to be willing to get through all those uncomfortable tests. That's what it felt like. I had to be willing to do the work of managing my own consciousness in that experience. And it got me to a really wonderful place. So, thank you. That was better.
Good job. Good job. Thank you, Sandy. So I want to leave us with a quote from Ernest Holmes, from the Living the Science of Mind, that kind of wraps up where we've been this month. We have one more Sunday, I know, but this kind of wraps up where we've been so far. So speaks beautifully to what Sandy was saying. Placing our entire trust, our complete faith, our whole conviction in the simple truth that we are rooted in the living Spirit, that we have access to the mind of God, and to the love and to the power and to the peace of Spirit. We should walk in confidence and speak our spiritual convictions with complete assurance, knowing that there is a presence and a power with us and for us and operating through us, a presence and a power that knows no defeat. Knowing this is how we get safely, securely to the other side. Let's anchor this in prayer. One presence, one love, one power, one peace. One presence, one power, one love, one peace. And that is the presence, the power, the love, the peace of God. That presence, that power, that love, that peace of God lives as me, moves as me, breathes as me. And as this is true of me, it is true of each and every one of us. The love, the presence, the power, the peace of God wants only one thing: to express itself more fully through us. So I affirm for us here right now. I speak my word and activate the perfect law right now for us, knowing and proclaiming that as we take the steps, continue to take the steps, continue to apply these spiritual principles that are so much more than just words. They are spiritual principles. As we apply them, that we become refined and purified, and we live who we are, who we're meant to be, expressing gifts, sharing our lives, sharing our joy, sharing who we are in ways that we're meant to share it, and having all the good that this earthly experience has for us to enjoy and to share with others. So I'm grateful that this is so. And I know that as we go about our week and we continue to apply these principles, that we each safely reach the other side of this iteration of our evolution. And then we begin again, but this time with greater faith, with a deeper knowing, and a more solid conviction of who and whose we are. For this, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And I release these words now into the perfect law, and let it be. And know that it is so. Together then, let us say, and so it is. Amen.